Well, it's a cool 45 degrees, Mesa, Arizona. Those of you that are on the East Coast or Texas in the mid-20s or the mid-30s, a lot colder. We're praying for you, just as you deal with the power outages and all of the challenges that come with surviving with no power and cold weather. This is Walk and Talk number 45. If you have your Bibles, great. If you don't, just listen. I'm going to be looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verses 9 to 14. Ecclesiastes 7, 9 to 14. Going to be talking about anger. Anger sleeps with the fool. A lot of us in today's culture justify anger. We use anger in all kinds of ways. So if you struggle with anger in any way, please pay attention. A lot of people are sarcastic, hateful. A lot of people dislike. They're annoyed. They're frustrated. They get indignant. They get mad. They use their emotions as a weapon. So I want to encourage you to pay close attention. Anger is a weapon for some people, and that could be your challenge, that you use your emotion to manipulate or to bully or to somehow soothe your conscience. So anger sleeps with the fool. Anger resides. Anger lives with the fool. Be careful. Don't allow anger to team up with you. Be real careful how you use your emotions. So I'm in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, starting in verse 9. This is February 18th. As I said earlier, it's a cool 45 degrees. The sun has been up for an hour and a half or so, but it's still chilly. But I'm enjoying the walk. So here we go. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Verse 9 says, "Do not be eager in your spirit to be angry, for anger resides in the heart of fools." Verse 10 says, "Do not say, 'Why is it that the former days were better than these days?'" In other words, that just said, where are the good old days? So people tend to compare present as bad and the past as the good old days. Verse 10 is saying, do not say, "Why is it that the former days were better than these days? For it is not from wisdom that you ask about this." Verse 11. Wisdom, along with an inheritance, is good, and an advantage to those who see the sun. Verse 12. For wisdom is protection, just as money is protection. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom, pretty amazing, isn't it? Again, good morning. That wisdom keeps its possessors alive. Let me repeat that to you. For wisdom is protection. Now, when you hear that word wisdom, think patience as opposed to anger. For wisdom or patience is protection, just as money is protection. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom, get this, patient, keeps its possessors alive. Verse 13. Consider the work of God, for who is able to straighten what is bent? And then verse 14. On the day of prosperity, be happy, Roger. On the good days, be happy, enjoy. But on the day of adversity, on the bad days, in other words, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other, so that a person will not discover anything that will come after him. Now, these verses, I'm going to work back through, because I think there's a lot of resentment, discontentment, anger. People are mad. They're mad at their circumstances. They're mad at God. They're mad at their health. Maybe they're fighting some physical health problems, or they're annoyed at their relatives, or they're frustrated at when they drive the car, or they're indignant because people do the dumbest things. So let's go back to verse 9. It says this, Roger, do not be eager in your spirit to be angry, for anger resides, dwells, lives in the heart of fools. This verse is setting an idea, a theme, and that is that it's real easy for us to be controlled by our emotions rather than God. So, in other words, the whole passage is about the sovereignty of God. And my question for me is, am I trying to usurp God? Am I trying to tell God what to do? Because there's lots of things in my life I don't have control over. And I use my emotions, my anger, as a weapon to hurt people, or to somehow express my own, my own disappointment with myself. I get angry about something that I did or something that somebody else has done. So the verse is saying, do not be eager, don't be quick to get impatient. Don't be quick to get upset. Don't fly off the handle, Roger. Many of us are walking through life and things happen to us that we can't control. Often I refer to it as the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good days and the bad days. So God is saying that anger is associated with being a fool. You remember that word fool, right? That means someone that's foolish. Someone that has omitted God. Someone that doesn't recognize there is a God. So the fool is basically someone who acts as if there is no God. So anger should be your warning signal. If you're angry, if you're snappy, if you're resentful, if you find yourself boiling, let me just encourage you. You're on the verge of being identified as a fool. Anger is living with you. Matter of fact, you've welcomed anger. That's not where you as a Christian wants to be. Because verse 10 says, Do not say, why is it that the former days were better than these? In other words, where are the good old days? Those days when everything around me went really a whole lot better than it's going today. Maybe for some of you, it was that perfect job in the past. Or some of you, it was that set of circumstances in the past where there just was very little pain or very little discomfort for you. Or maybe you're fighting a health issue, but in the past you didn't have it. Be careful about this comparing past days to present day. Because the text is saying, verse 10, Ecclesiastes 7:10, why is it that the former days were better than these? But that's a question. Now here's the next verse, the next phrase. For it is not from wisdom that you should ask about this. In other words, wise people don't compare the past to the present. Well, they may learn from it, but not in an anger or resentful way. Not in a complaining about today or what's the future going to be like. What you have going on in this text is anger is an emotion that forces you away from God. And you dwell on your circumstances of the past or the present. And you compare. This is the way it is today, but in the good old days, we didn't have these problems. Be careful. The text is saying don't do that. Don't compare. Wise people don't ask in a comparison way to somehow deny the sovereignty of God. If you're in a bad place today, the text is going to push you to get under the sovereignty of God. If your circumstances are poor, so to speak, or unhealthy, if your circumstances are challenging, if your circumstances are painful, the text is going to say, God is still God. If the culture is going in a way that you don't agree with, listen, God is still God. If the relatives in your life, if the friends in your life abandon God, that's not an excuse for you to abandon God or for you to get mad or angry. So the next verse says, wisdom, remember what wisdom is, patience, as opposed to anger. Wisdom, along with an inheritance, is good and an advantage to those who see the sun. So basically, if you put the word patience in there, patience along with an inheritance is good. If you have an inheritance, if you have money, and you're angry, life is a mess. Some of the most unhappy people are people with money. But if you can add patience, and if you have money, and a lot of people are blessed, you have to understand that even though the circumstances around you are not what you would like, be careful not to omit God. Inheritance, money is good. But if you add anger to that, now you've got a lethal situation. Add patience if you have some money. An advantage to those who see the sun. In other words, you see the sun, it makes you smile. Life is good. The next verse says, verse 12, for wisdom is protection just as money is protection, but the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom keeps its possessors alive. Let me summarize verse 12 real quick. Angry people self-destruct. Verse 12 is saying, patient people. Patient people. Patience will protect you, just as money will protect you. The advantage of knowledge is that patience will keep its possessors alive. All of these verses are designed to stress, don't get frustrated, Roger. Roger, don't get resentful. Roger, don't get frustrated. Keep obeying God. No matter what's going on around you, when you get indignant, when you're annoyed, when you feel like flying off of the handle, don't forget the sovereignty of God. God is in the good days, God is in the bad days, and God is in the ugly days. Watch verse 13. You can see it all come together here. Consider, Roger, the work of God. That's Ecclesiastes 7:13. For who is able to straighten what God has bent? In other words, if God made the earth round, can you straighten it up and make the earth flat? And the answer is no. In other words, verse 13 is saying, we want a straight line through life. We don't want ups and downs. We don't want a zigzag. See, if you've got to go up and down, if you've got to climb mountains, we don't like that. But there are times in life you have to climb the mountain. If God decides to make something bent, he can do that. For who is able to straighten what God has bent? So if God has made, and here's where you have to wrestle with the sovereignty of God. If God has made difficult days for you, you're going to have to submit to the sovereignty of God. If you're living in a circumstance where life is challenging, whatever challenge that may be, it could be cold weather, it could be a broken relationship, it could be little money. Listen, God is still God. Who is able to straighten what God has bent? Sovereignty, the sovereignty of God, is basically announcing there's a whole lot of things in life you can't change. You'll try. You'll be frustrated. You'll try to change things, and at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you can't change it. You can't. Because God has chosen to make that bent or to make that curved. You want it to be straight, but that's not reality. The next verse says, on verse 14, here's the big key of how to be joyful, how to be happy. On the day of prosperity, be happy. Verse 14. But on the day of adversity, consider, God has made the one day as well as the other day. God has made the prosperity day as well as the adversity day. Again, recognize the sovereignty of God in these verses. It says, so that a person will not discover anything that will come after him. Recognize, don't worry, don't get angry about the future, about your circumstances. Don't get angry. God is still your God on the good days and the bad days. The text is saying, anger omits God. Anger removes the sovereignty of God from your vocabulary, from your mind. I would like to suggest to you, don't let your anger sleep with you. Let the sovereignty of God sleep with you. God made one day to be prosperous, and God made another day that has challenges in it. It's never going to go away. There is the free will of man and the sovereignty of God, and they always work hand in hand. We don't understand it. I wish I could explain it. But if God is over it all, if God is over everything, He's Lord, He's also in everything. And you have to believe that in your days of disappointment or frustration, whatever that may be for you, in your day of pain, He's still God. And you choose to recognize, I can't change what is bent. I can't change what is curved. In other words, I prefer a straight line, but for this time, I'm in a zigzag. I'm in an up and down situation. Rather than get mad or angry at that situation, your situation, because the day is painful, the text is saying, consider the work of God. Consider the sovereignty of God. And the text is saying, be happy. That's what verse 14 pushes every Christian to be. Not miserable. Not be mean, not be angry. On the day of prosperity, be happy. Verse 14, Ecclesiastes 7:14. But on the day of adversity, consider this. Self-examine. God has made the one day as well as the other day. My desire needs to be God's desire. When we align vertically with God, we mellow out, we smile a whole lot more. Why fight something you can't change? You can't change it. And God knows how much I've tried to change it. There are many situations. You will beat your head against the wall, you'll get mad, you'll get angry, you'll even threaten to kill someone, and you can't change. You can't change it. So consider the fact that God is sovereign. In your day of pain, God is at work in your life. How He's at work, I don't know. What He's trying to accomplish, I don't know. But the text is saying, consider the work of God. All things work together for good. All things, good, bad, and ugly, work together for good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Remember, anger lives in the heart of fools. You don't want to be angry. You want to be patient. Patient. Persevere. In other words, you want to be a person of humility, calmness, endurance. You want to be the type of person that's got some grit. You can practice self-control with those things you can't change. In our society, people say, couldn't we return to the good old days? In our culture, would you really want to go back to the days of 50, 100, 200 years ago? Do you think they didn't have any adversity, any problems? There was no sickness? Do you know how many hours people worked every day 50, 100 years ago, 200 years ago? Do you know the level of ignorance 500 years ago? Do you recognize that in Jesus' day, the persecution that took place? Remember, Jesus was crucified. Remember that Jesus was mocked. Remember, all of the apostles, the disciples, abandoned Jesus. See, we look back and we think the past is better than today. Well, the text is saying, Roger, don't do that. Today is a sovereign day. Today is the day that God wants you to enjoy, whether it's a good day or a bad day. You can't straighten what is bent. You have to come under and bow the knee in humility to the sovereignty of God. So, quick application. How are you doing with the humility, the humbleness of to the sovereignty of God? Do you lift him up in the days of adversity? It's easy in the good days when you got money, when you got inheritance. But when you don't have much money? Or do you let your anger, your resentment, your hate, your malice? Remember, anger sleeps with the fool. Well, thanks for listening. This coming Saturday at 10 a.m., the intersect service, I'd encourage you to join us for worship, 10 a.m. on Saturday. Nathan Pipe will be preaching. His wife, Megan, will be leading in worship. Encourage you to join us on Sunday at 9:30 and 11 and 6 p.m. online. Same for Saturday at 10 a.m. online through our Facebook page, FBC Facebook page, and on campus on Sunday at 9:30, 11, and 6 p.m. online, or come to worship. We encourage people to wear masks. We encourage people to socially distance. We encourage you to come to campus at 9:30, 11, and 6 p.m. Enjoy. You can enjoy life by focusing on the sovereignty of God. Consider God. Blessings on you.